very happy to introduce the next session, which is about building an integrated framework by Rashmi Birla. A very quick introduction of Rashmi Birla is she's the founder of Enggauge Solution, an ESG consultant specializing in sustainability strategy, data management, and capacity building. With experience as a global head of issuer communication and MSCI Inclusive, she has driven stakeholder engagement and ESG data transparency. She's passionate about transforming sustainability data into actionable intelligence. She empowers team to drive meaningful change. I will be sharing her profile on LinkedIn, and let me just get her from the backstage to the stream right now. Hi Rashmi, welcome to the stream. Very excited to have you. Now over to you. I'm going to give the stage to you and move out from here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Okay. Hi, everyone. A very good afternoon, morning, evening, depending on where you're joining from. As Teresa kindly gave my introduction, I'm Rashmi Birla, and I'm an ESG professional with an experience of around 12 years in ESG. Largely have had a corporate career with financial institutions like Euromoney, JP Morgan, and MSCI. And now I have taken a leap of faith and started my own consulting company, which is called Engage Solutions. It's an end-to-end consulting ESG adaptive ESG advisory service, and we have a very intuitive approach to implementing and integrating ESG into a business strategy or a company's business vision. And today what we are going to sort of do as an exercise, or say this workshop is going to focus on a very unique approach to ESG, which is understanding how ESG is important to each and every functional group of an organization, and how all these groups, based on their specializations, their challenges, and their capabilities, can have their own customized KPIs, business strategies, and targets. And when all of them come together, it basically weaves into an ESG strategy for the entire organization. And that's something that, we can monitor, manage, and really get a company on the path to net zero, which is, I think, most of the companies are aiming for that, be it due to regulations or be it due to their own value systems. ESG plays a very, very important part in all of this. And a lot of people are confused usually between what is ESG and how is it different from CSR or sustainability. So these are very, very different concepts. To me, I would say CSR is a voluntary activity, though it is induced by the fact that you're making profit and the government wants you to dedicate some amount of your profit, but it does not necessarily align with your business vision or strategy. Sustainability is about managing all your risks in your ecosystem, which we will go through in my workshop. And when you actually attach numbers to all these sustainability risks, opportunities, all these parameters, they basically can be named as ESG. So without further ado, I think I will jump right into really what we are going to do today. What are the objectives? And my aim, or say my objective of taking you through this workshop would be that you understand sustainability, ESG, why it is so important in the context of the entire organization, and then also how being part of an organization, being part of a functional unit, how your unit and yourself can be an integral part of this entire strategy and roadmap for ESG, and to make it more intuitive and simple, so it doesn't become like this complex animal that a lot of people deem ESG to be these days. So with that, can I request Teresa to bring on the presentation, please? Okay, thank you, Teresa. So basically, as I spoke, this is Engage Solutions, and this is the logo of my company. And today's workshop is about building an integrated ESG framework across business functions. So my focus would be to, help you understand how ESG is different for each functional unit and how the entire, each business strategy or each functional business strategy then comes together to form the vision and mission for a company that's aligned to ESG parameters. So, as I said, the objectives of today's session would be to give you a strong foundation on ESG. I'm sure if you attended other sessions today, because the focus and theme is ESG, you would have got a certain sense, and a lot of participants already have that. But we'll just take a different angle to it, maybe. As I said, we align ESG with functional roles, identifying the risks and opportunities for each of these initiatives that you can undertake within your functional role. Um, Also, I'm planning to do a small interactive brainstorming session, take you through a bunch of case studies where you'll understand really how these big companies are focusing on various aspects of ESG within their organization to attain the success that they have. And, you will then be equipped enough to develop, say, a roadmap with measurable milestones for your own functional unit as well as for your organization. So, with that, I'm going to move to the other next slide, which is when you hear ESG, what comes to mind, and one ESG initiative you admire in any company. So, this is the first time I'm hosting it on this platform, so I'm not sure I'm if you guys are able to chat and will be able to sort of provide any one line answers when it comes to, say, when you hear ESG, what comes to your mind, or one initiative that you have come across which you really admire in any of the companies, could be your company as well. I'm just waiting if anybody wants to reply. Otherwise, I could just give a brief reply and then we could sort of move on. Okay. No worries. So when I hear ESG, what comes to my mind is a lot of technical jargon, and ESG itself is environment, social governance. What does it actually mean in the context of a company? And basically, I relate it to sustainability, as I said. And one ESG initiative you admire in any company, I think a very simple one that I've always that has been my inspiration, so to say, is this small practice in this company called Faber-Castell, which is a stationery company. It's a very, very old company and doing very well. And they've always had sustainability as part of their integral value system. And one thing that they have followed basically is that in every meeting room in the office they have a every year they decide on their sustainability agenda or their goals. And whenever there is a meeting that happens in a meeting room, um, after the meeting concludes, the team has to align one of the meeting takeaways with the sustainability agenda that's displayed in every in every meeting room. So every meeting room has a small display of what are the ESG vision, mission, and milestones for that company. And whatever meeting happens, has one of the takeaways has to be aligned with those goals, or guidelines. So I think that basically talks a lot about how ESG as a concept can be integrated into the value system or the cultural fabric of any organization. So that's basically one of the ESG initiatives which is very close to my heart, and my objective, or say my vision for starting Engage Solutions, is also to make ESG as simple um, as part of a company's culture. So now I'm just briefly going to also tell you what really are stakeholders, because when you talk about ESG, you will hear a lot of jargon around stakeholders and what is actually their role in ESG. So assume, you yourself, either you assume that you are a company or you assume this for your own company. There are various bodies and there are various institutions that play a very, very important part in the functioning of your organization. So when I say that, basically, let's start with employees, because all of us relate to that kind of feeling. So, you know, if the company doesn't, if the employees of that company are not happy, they don't have enough engagement with the company, and they don't align themselves with the value system, then there's a risk to the company, which means there'll be turnover and the company has to invest more in recruiting people, training them, and it's a cost. So this is a risk, and employees are an important stakeholder for a company's success. The next one is government. I'm going anti-clockwise. Government, because it makes a lot of policies, and the company is basically required by the government policies to adhere to them, to ensure that there is compliance. And if they don't, then there are fines and there's a reputational damage and things like that. So that's basically why this poses a risk or opportunity, and that's why government is an important stakeholder. Supply chain and vendors goes without saying. If there's a disruption in any of your vendors or supply chain suppliers, then your production is going to be impacted, and that's why it's very important that you have a very careful selection of your supply chain, about your vendors, and make sure that they are in alignment with ESG norms, and they are also very ethical in their business conduct. Customers, obviously, if they stop liking your product for reasons, for example, they do not really appreciate you using too much of plastic in your packaging, for example, then they want to switch to another competitor, and that's a risk to your business. So customers are also a very, very big stakeholder. And one of the big stakeholders that nobody talks about or say doesn't identify, but they are doing that now, I'm very happy that it is climate, because climate has an impact on your business operations. Big or small doesn't matter, and you as a company will have an impact on the climate. So this is a two-way relationship, and this is very, very important in the current context of global warming, climate change, and things like that. So there are some business owners who are, they own medium or small enterprises, and they'll be like, really, we don't think we are such a big threat to climate, or climate is a threat to us. Now, for example, it's a small travel agency. It's very apparent that if there are climate change events that happen and they have their clients going out somewhere, and they are stuck, there's a landslide, there is a flooding in some area, basically it is going to impact them. And why will they not impact climate? They impact climate because the running of your business organizations, you will have your air conditioning systems, you will have employees commuting to office. All this is basically contributing to the environment. So business, regardless of the size of their operations, are impacting climate, and climate obviously is impacting them. Now, not to say that this is all just risk, that these stakeholders pose. These are opportunities as well. Now, how you look at them or how you convert a risk into opportunity is also part of your ESG strategy. Now, giving you an example, why is it an opportunity? For example, customers, right? If you were to make some changes to your product, now you've gauged that there are around 70% of your customers who are in that age group of say the Gen Zs, who are very conscious about environment, and they would want to buy things which are very environmentally friendly. So if you just change your packaging to become environment friendly, then you can be rest assured that your sales will go up. So that's how you can use this entire um, assessment of risks and opportunities to understand your risks, identify where your pockets of opportunities lie, right? So ESG is not just about, pinpointing your carbon emissions and telling you what your risks are. It's also how you'll want to look at it and convert things that can be converted into opportunities. So I always try and, explain ESG in the context of stakeholders, because in the earlier days, uh, companies would always be in the service of the shareholder. Their only objective was to maximize profits for shareholders. Now, because of the recent slew of events that has happened, there's awareness about climate and things like that. uh, the focus has changed from shareholder service to stakeholder service, which means that companies now are making their policies in a way that they are friendly to all the stakeholders. They're able to align with the interests of stakeholders. So now ESG is being called as it propagates stakeholder capitalism. So just wanted to end at that. Having said that, what exactly is ESG? ESG stands for Environment, Social, and Governance. It's a framework, as I said, which is used to measure a company's sustainability, its ethical impact on the society, and its governance practices, which means that ESG also takes into account how you are governing your business. I always say that ESG starts from G because all the decisions about being ethical or being sustainable or being employee friendly start with how the board decides. So essentially, ESG starts from G, and G is a very important factor. Um, there is some numbers that I've included which may be helpful for you. Basically, 88% of investors consider ESG in decision making, which means that if your company is following ESG parameters, is has ESG essentials in place, then it's basically very favorable when investors scrutinize it for investments. Now there's more and more research coming out where ESG aligned companies, they are outperforming competitors by 20%, which is an HBR finding. As I said, 66% of consumers, they do prefer sustainable brands. Now, even if you take your example, whoever is attending right now, if you were given a choice of choosing between two brands, one was sustainable, having ethical practices, eco-friendly ingredients, you would, intuitively be inclined to purchase that. Give me a moment. Sorry. Yeah. So that's a very organic outcome of being sustainable or ESG aligned. And obviously, because there are a lot of regulatory mandates in place that have come up specifically in EU or Europe, and with India as well, there is a BRSR framework which mandates top 1,000 companies for now to be reporting on ESG parameters. So even if you don't want to spend on ESG policies or making investments into being ESG aligned, you still are mandated to report on those parameters. So it's always good that when you're reporting, you might as well report good numbers and do some, changes to your policies and practices so that they become ESG aligned, right? So that's what ESG is. Now, I've already spoken a lot about this, but there are two fundamental concepts that come into ESG. And why I'm taking you all this is when we come to the actual foundation of how this applies to um, functional units, all these concepts basically play a big role, right? So, two main functions or two main concepts under ESG are materiality and circularity. Materiality is nothing but, as I said, you saw the entire ecosystem of all the risks that your stakeholders could pose to you. Now, as a company or as an individual business owner, it's not possible for you to be able to address all these risks in one go or together. It's only reasonable to to be able to prioritize your risks and then tackle them one by one. So when we talk about materiality, it essentially means that what is it that's posing the largest threat to your sustainability, your business continuity, um, and basically you rank them, and those are the material factors. They are called material factors that will impact your business continuity the most. So you rank them and then you address them. Then the other concept is circularity, because one of the essential imperatives under ESG is how do you maximize resource efficiency and you minimize waste. in all sectors. It's just not the waste that is generated from a production facility or operations facility. It's basically waste. It could be waste with being waste being generated because you're selling too much to your customers, and they, for example, clothes, right? So you're selling them at cheap prices, people are hoarding clothes, they are just then disposing those clothes. That's waste that's being created. um, there is waste that gets generated because you're circulating the same content again and again, and things like that, right? So how they can really be addressed is, there are certain, you can apply innovation engagement with your stakeholders, you align them with your policies, and then make each of your stakeholders accountable for their actions, how they are impacting your larger narrative of ESG. um, what are the outcomes? I think it's quite um, intuitive when you say, obviously you will attain operational efficiencies because of circularity, and you're reducing costs and things like that. Employee engagement is going to improve. Consumer demand is definitely something that's an opportunity to leverage. You will always be able to comply with regulatory compliance. The company valuation will improve because obviously you have favorable investor scrutiny. Investors will invest. And just a minute. I'm going to try and go to full screen in case that helps, but last time I tried it, it just locked me off. Um, no, it's not allowing me that. Okay, no worries. All right, I will move to the next slide. And this is, I'm not going to go through this in detail, conscious of time. But what is materiality? As I said, it is what matters most. And I thought a few good examples. As I said, it's just not possible for an organization to be addressing all risks at one go. But let's see what a few examples are um, of materiality risks, and this will depend on the industry that you are part of. Because ESG, I may not have mentioned, but again, ESG risks and opportunities are very different for different industries. What may be material to a chemical industry might not be as material to, say, a banking industry. So information privacy and security, for example, a company like Facebook, this could be one of the most material issues, and they've had controversies surrounding this. So it becomes one of their paramount issues to be able to safeguard and make sure that it's completely resilient to this kind of a risk. Talent attraction is another common ESG material factor. And if a company is actually facing a lot of attrition, then this becomes a material risk for them. So yeah, these are a few of them. And what you see on the right hand side basically is a materiality map where, based on the financial impact and the actual material impact, you map these issues that you've identified as part of the materiality assessment, and understand which are the issues that you need to address on priority and which ones can really wait. So that's something that is part of your initial assessment when you go in for when you embark on the ESG journey. The next is circularity, as we spoke. So the focus of a lot of companies is today to ensure that they somehow are able to implement, basics of a circular economy. And this, as I said, is not necessarily just reusing your raw materials, but this could be, very, very creative strategies where you could use your talent as being more fungible and create some circular careers for them, and that impact will also be seen in your engagement rates. Data circularity, product, you can advertise your product as a service, you can conceptualize your product as a service, and then also practice circular procurement. And to give you a few examples, Dell had a take back program which allowed customers to return old laptops and it would refurbish those and then recycle into new. So they've basically improved the life cycle of the product, which means that lesser waste is being generated in the short term. Adidas had a Futurecraft loop shoes, which are designed to be recycled back into new shoes and things like that. Now, as part of the product as a service, as I spoke, Philips had offered medical equipment through leasing models. So this really helped the medical industry and also created lesser waste. So that's circularity. Now we come to ESG functional relevance, which basically is the crux, or say the essence of this particular workshop that we are conducting. And as I said, each of the department, like ESG, is very, very unique to each company, and based on their industry, their risks and opportunities will differ. Even at a functional level, the risks and opportunities and capabilities of achieving ESG excellence would differ within an organization across functional. So for the main functional areas of any organization are IT, HR, marketing, operations, sales and support, legal and finance. I mean, based on the companies, there could be more, but largely you would be able to bucketize them into these um, these units. And for each of these units, I've just put in a few initiatives that can be taken where for example, for IT, you can do a green IT policy where you understand what's your current emission across the computers that are there, the IT infrastructure that's there, that's data centers, how are they powered, how much carbon is being really emitted, what can you do to reduce those emissions. So that's something an IT team as a whole, as a unit, can understand and can identify really what is challenging, and also what are their capabilities to achieve targets that they can set for themselves. Now, it comes from the top. They don't really know what actual challenges on the floor could be. So it's always good for companies to have workshops that includes key team members or ESG champions, so to say, within each of these functional units, to understand how these challenges can be addressed, and maybe they come up with really creative ideas based on the experience of these key members working on the floor. Similarly, HR, marketing, operations. And on the right, I've also included some of the targets that you can think about when it comes to, say, for example, green IT. As I said, how does green IT policy aim at reducing company wide energy consumption, and then you give a timeline as well as a target. Similarly, HR can focus on doing something around diversity and inclusion. How do you have policies to improve or increase underrepresented groups in the leadership, for example? And operations can work on ethical supply chain. And then how does this entire strategy across business functions house under environment, social, and governance? So that's when I spoke about this getting weaved into a roadmap, an ESG roadmap for the entire organization. So let's just get a little deeper into what is the entire scope of addressable impact. And this is also a lot of text. I hope this deck can be shared, or people can get screenshots of it. But basically, whatever I spoke in the previous slide, this is also just getting a little more deep dive into how policies and practices across these functional units can really make an impact. And you know saying that, I am not saying that these are the only actions that can be taken. One can be really creative about things and do cross functional impacts as well, based on the culture of the company, the actual operations, how fungible are various departments within an organization. It can be a lot of different perspectives and approaches that can be applied within an organization. So that's up to how um, how sincere and so how invested a company is into really making this work. So this is just a very, very broad framework of how this can be done. But as I said, it can really become a little more, people can become a little more creative about how this can work for their organization, because ESG as a function really impacts um, I would say, someone who's actually a housekeeping staff in your organization to the board level. It impacts every employee, it impacts every policy and practice that you have within your organization. So everybody is completely, totally responsible and accountable for taking the right steps. And it starts with the culture of a company. And once we are embedding that as part of these functional unit practices, I think it goes a long way into making the entire vision come true. As I said, why this approach? Because it does have tangible business benefits. Every unit being accountable and tracking their own success would basically be able to let you know where, who's doing what's going right, what's not working, and what's working really well, where your investments should go, and things like that. It has scalability, it has a long term integration benefit. And as I said, it's really actionable and has a measurable impact. So the endeavor of the entire exercise or this approach is to ensure that it does not just become a narrative for a company to publish on its sustainability report, or just do a checkbox item for regulatory purposes and publishing their reports. It goes way beyond, and it has a lot of impact on people, planet, and the overall profits. So that's basically the crux of why ESG is so important, why sustainability is becoming the mainstream for all companies that you can think of, the bigger ones, and the medium and the smaller ones are obviously following suit. Now, how does this all weave together into creating, impactful, measured, and perceived results for a company? So, and this is how basically an ESG strategy should essentially work. um, we define sustainability vision regulatory alignment first, because a company should be very clear based on the industry that it's working for, its competitive landscape, the geographies that it is operating in, how are they going to impact the operations, and how the company is going to impact the geographical resources and other things in the ecosystem. So taking all this into account, it's important that a vision for the company is established. Also, as I said, if a company is operating out of Europe or India, it's essential to know which regulatory compliance requirement you are, um, you are having to comply with. So understand what your regulatory alignment requirements are, and then is when you start off on really assessing, doing your materiality assessment, doing a deep dive into really what are the gaps currently in terms of risks and opportunities. And then once that is done, you study that, you establish what policies would you want for sustainability. Based on that, what would be the metrics, and all this is being done across all your functional units. So every unit has their own responsibility of conducting this sustainability framework. And then once it's done, it's integrated at a company level to understand what is the overall impact, what are the other stakeholders outside of the company that need to be involved, and then it basically flows into a complete ESG framework for the organization. Um, Now, this is something which would basically be a little more engaging for the participants, because this actually talks about the section, actually talks about the real world case studies, and how companies have actually focused on some of their strengths, some of their opportunity areas, or maybe risks, to transform um, those parameters into a better perception of their company, manage their risks, and also create a lot of profit for them. So, and what I have done is, for each of the functional units, there is one case study. So for IT, you will have one, for HR. So all the functional units that you saw, there's one case study, one company that has been taken, and we've tried to see really how that company, company's functional unit was able to contribute to the overall strategy and could derive benefits. So the first is we take IT, which is, I think, an enabler for most of the companies. I think all of the companies require a very, very robust IT system. And Google itself, being an IT company, they have always followed the carbon neutral policy since 2007. They have been carbon neutral, and their aim is to basically by 2030 become carbon free. And they are, investing in a lot of innovative technology. They are very, very conscious in terms of how they can build data centers and cloud services that will help to distribute the load of energy usage across companies, and how they can absorb it using AI, how they can optimize the load across data centers, and for the larger good. And obviously that benefits them as well. As I said, Google Cloud, which helps companies reduce their carbon footprint, and it has AI technologies to optimize the workflows, which obviously you know implies that there will be lesser energy usage. They also have a real-time carbon footprint dashboard, which allows businesses that use the Google Cloud, to measure and reduce their emissions. So, these are efforts that they are putting in place as part of being an IT company, and their IT team putting together these initiatives and KPIs to monitor towards a better pathway to net zero. If there are any questions, then I'd like to sort of answer them as well. You can speak, or you can put them in the chat box, and I'll be sure to monitor that and try and answer those questions as well. This is something that Salesforce has been able to achieve through their HR functional unit. They've had a pay equity and employee volunteering model. Now, what I mean by pay equity is they are very diligent with conducting annual pay audits to close out any gender gap and racial pay gaps that exist. And they've been doing that since 2015. They have done a number of salary adjustments to ensure that there is fair compensation across the entire organization. And that's something that is a very, very strong ESG narrative that they boast about. If you read the reports, also, they have a complete transparent methodology on how they do it and why they do it. They also are very, very strong on having their employees volunteer for the social causes. So, three things that stand out for them is that there's the 1:1:1 model, where they donate 1% of equity, 1% of employee time, and 1% of product to social causes, which have a positive social impact. Employees receive a 7-day paid volunteer time off as well annually. Um, to do voluntary work. The company also matches employee donations, fostering a strong culture of CSR within the organization. So this essentially improves the employee engagement, which means that the more engaged, positively engaged your employees are, it's going to definitely speak through your profits and your efficiency levels. This is a very interesting one. I personally like this one, where the marketing team came up with this sustainability agenda. They ran this "Don't Buy This Jacket" campaign. Essentially, what it means, it was launched in 2011. It urged their own customers to rethink their purchase uh, decisions and prioritize sustainable choices. So if you already have a jacket, then think twice before you want to invest in another one, because there are environment costs of producing the jacket and consuming the jacket. As a result, it actually improved or increased the brand loyalty. It positioned this company, Patagonia, as one of the leaders in sustainable retail. And as I said, it's not necessary that you only improve certain aspects of sustainability to attract customers. You can have these kind of campaigns that help you, gain some leadership in the industry that you're part of. And then obviously to add to it, it also commits 1% of its sales to environment causes, which is basically aligned with the larger vision or mission of the company. Thanks, Gul. Right. So moving on, Tesla, everybody knows about Tesla, and they basically have a great strategy around their operations because they're very heavy on obviously the operations part of their organization. They have something called Gigafactory designs, which are designed to operate on renewable energy. The fact that they are forerunners in the e-vehicle systems is a testament of that. Um, and the Gigafactory in Nevada actually runs on solar panels and aims for net zero energy consumption. This is something that's a model that a lot of companies are trying to replicate, and hopefully we will, have a lot of companies that um, make themselves sustainable in terms of energy consumption through a good rational mix of conventional and renewable methods of for using energy. um, they have a closed loop battery recycling process where they reduce waste and their reliance on the raw material for these kind of production this kind of production. They use energy efficient robotics and AI driven automation, and they also have a very sustainable supply chain practices. They actually have there's a white paper that I read in terms of how they source materials, and most of the raw material, or say the parts that are used in Tesla factories, are actually created within the factory itself. They have very low reliance on other external vendors, so to say. And they have a stringent supply chain policy as well. IKEA, I've picked up companies that everybody sort of relates to, and they're not necessarily maybe an Indian origin or context, but you know, I would love to do a session where we only focus on Indian companies as well. I think that would be very relevant to our use case. So yeah, let's see. Anyway, so IKEA has a buyback and resell program where it just encourages customers not to throw away the used furniture. They can be converted to store credits. They can be, the store credits obviously can be used to buy more products at a discount. So they extend the life cycle, reduce the landfill waste, and they have an aim to become fully circular by 2030, which is commendable. It's an interesting read when you want to read about really how IKEA is getting creative in terms of its policies and incentive programs for customers, which are helping it to become or meet its goal of being fully circular by 2030. So the impact is obviously there's a reduction in fast furniture waste because IKEA as a company, as a concept, they do believe in fast furniture, so they need to also be responsible for reducing the waste that can be created out of that whole concept. It has pledged to use 100% renewable and recycled materials in its products, and the company aims to cut its climate footprint by 50% by 2030. So it's just when you talk about sustainability, when you talk about ESG, it's not just an aim to reduce your carbon footprint or be net zero by so and so year. That's one essential goal, and it's a great goal to have and progress towards it. But it also means a lot of other parameters that need to be focused on. Like we are going through these examples, you can appreciate that a lot of these companies are not only just doing carbon emission reduction where they have to, they're doing that, but again, their policies are more to reduce waste. It could be to improve the biodiversity situation in their geographies that they are operating in. It could be to improve the the ecosystem as a whole, the communities that are there. So all this also aligns or converges towards your ESG goals. It's just not the fact that what are your carbon emissions and what are you doing about them, and how much will you reduce it by what year. There are too many creative policies, practices that you can think about, which essentially are which essentially mean that you are embedding or integrating ESG into your business practices. Moving on to legal, so Microsoft is a huge proponent of being on the being very very diligent with its disclosures, with maintaining its data linearity, which means that they're able to trace back their data, they're able to establish the authenticity of the disclosures that they have been doing, and they're very transparent with ESG reporting. So it's a good read if you come across any of, and they're available on the website as well. These are all publicly disclosed documents where they are publishing a number of them just to show what they're doing towards sustainability, what they're doing towards ESG, the environment, and what are their pledges, how are they progressing towards them. In fact, so Microsoft had pledged to become carbon negative by 2030, which means that it's going to be removing more carbon that than it emits. Now I know that Microsoft has a lot of resources that it can deploy towards this kind of goal that it has, and it's good because if companies like Microsoft, given the size, by virtue of the size at which they operate, if they are not able to get to these kind of aggressive targets, then who else will? Small companies, medium-sized companies can definitely focus on what they can do in their limited capacity and resources that they have for now. But it takes a lot for companies like Microsoft to commit to negative carbon emissions by a certain year. So it's just an inspiration for other companies, and hopefully they will get there, is what I'm saying. By 2050, it also aims to erase its historical carbon emissions, which means that dating back to 1975, they will calculate how much carbon emission has gone into. Now, don't ask me how they're going to calculate it, because that's a complex calculation when it comes to scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 calculations, and then putting in measures or implementing them to be coming to a statement saying we have actually eliminated all our historical carbon footprint. Okay. So that's something that I don't know. I find it a little debatable, because there are a lot of debates or say contentions going around. How do you measure? How do you see what's the actual impact and things like that? But as long as they are doing what they're committing to, it means good for the planet, is what I would say. Um, Also, it has a lot of policies that promote climate risk disclosures and sustainability standards for its vendors and the entire supply chain. It's also a very aggressive thought leader when it comes to advancing climate accountability in the corporate sector. So that's something that Microsoft can do. And on a legal front, actually, the main function of a legal team in any organization is to also ensure that there are um, adequate compliance measures being taken, like it's easy for the company as a whole to be able to comply with regulatory requirements, which means that, for example, there's a huge company and there's a BRSR report that they have to furnish the data for and submit it because it's a SEBI mandate. So the legal department, I think a very huge responsibility for them is to ensure that they are able to harness or garner this information from whichever departments are responsible for giving in the data, making sure this is audit ready. The data, is not just manufactured, or say, there is some sort of traceability in the data that's there. and ensure that this whole legal compliance is being adhered to on a regular basis. Because if it's not, then it's a risk, because then there's a reputational damage to the company. It will basically not reflect very well on their own image, the public image that they are creating, if they are not complying with regulatory requirements. And obviously, not to speak about the fines and penalties that will be levied upon them.
Rashmi, you're on mute.
Sorry, yeah, thank you. I missed that. Yeah, so I'll start again. Right. So, um, one of the, like, finance, intuitively, the main role of finance is to ensure that the the company's statements and numbers are reflected, are maintained properly, and you know finance also makes sure that there is enough investment in ESG. So they are the decision makers largely in most of the firms. So that is one accountability that I would say the finance department has. But other than that, they also make decisions on how a company's profits are recirculated. Where is the company investing in? What are the other companies that they are wanting to, say, maybe invest in, acquire, merge with, and things like that. So these kind of decisions should also be driven by a sustainability agenda in mind. And BlackRock, by virtue of its business function, which is essentially to invest. It's the largest institutional investor company, and so for them to be so mindful of their investment basically sets an industry precedent. And that's how a functional unit of finance can also take some inspiration from. So when I say that, everybody's heard about their CEO Larry Fink's ESG push, where a couple of years back he had written, and he writes it every year, where he reiterates that the company is very cognizant of the climate risks, and they are completely taking accountability of moving capital in the direction of companies that understand climate risk, that are doing something about sustainability. And it does not, and it wants to divest from companies that are essentially not doing well on ESG parameters. So, and it also urges companies to disclose sustainability data. So that's one of the parameters. So if they find a company they want to invest in, and that company is not disclosing adequate ESG related data, then BlackRock would not invest in that company. And that means there is a huge dent for the company in question, because every company requires funds, requires investors. So, and it obviously encourages businesses to align with the Paris Agreement targets, with the UN PRI goals, with all the science-based climate goals that the companies are establishing. So this is a very, very huge, um, criteria for BlackRock to be investing in companies. Also, because it's investing in so many companies, it votes at the company's board meetings, and it essentially has a policy to vote against boards of companies that fail to address climate risks. As I was speaking about stakeholder capitalism, BlackRock is one company that's wholeheartedly been promoting stakeholder capitalism. It believes in long-term value creation, and that you will see reflects in their investment, you know, methodology as well. And this is something that it's doing as being one of the biggest financial companies in the world. I know when I was part of MSCI ESG, BlackRock was one of our biggest consumer of ESG data. When I say biggest consumer, there used to be huge, I mean, files to the size of 1 to 7 GB that would be sent to BlackRock every single day. And it's not that it would go unnoticed. They were very, very diligent with assessing those files, and if there was any issue, any anomaly that they would see, it would immediately be reported as well. So they're not taking this lightly at all. It's a very, very integrated part of their investment strategy. And and everybody knows about it because the CEO makes sure that his annual letter highlights this value proposition that they are creating and how important ESG is for them. So yeah, that's basically all our case studies around every functional unit. What difference can it really make to the ESG narrative for a company? In fact, at Engage Solutions, we have a very, very rigorous curriculum that has been developed, one of its kind, I would say, where we want to, where what we do is we understand every functional unit, what are their, we make them understand what is sustainability, how important it is for them, their company, and their unit and their company, how they can, um, you know, get benefits out of it and how they can contribute, then get down to really doing what exactly are the ESG goals for that particular unit. What is it that that they think would be challenges, that they think that they would not get senior management support from? What is it that they can come up with as being creative, as being part of this? They know the organization better, so they come up with these um, different strategies. So we do that with each of the functional units. And then, based on the inputs that we get, based on the KPIs that the functional units commit to, the timelines that they commit to, we then get together with the management and make a ESG roadmap, make a complete strategy for the company. And because the units have already committed to these, then we have a system, we have a platform at our end which inputs all this information into this platform. There are stakeholders assigned to this platform, and everybody can see really what is being done by each of the units, what is pending, what are the new initiatives, and how every small step and data is basically being fed into the organization level dashboard, where you see every unit, what are the carbon emissions that they are blocking, what are the trainings that are happening, say, as part of HR, which are impacting, say, the employee engagement scores and things like that. So it's a very engaging platform which everybody understands, everybody knows how they are making an impact, what is the change that's they can feel around themselves. And that's what I would say is the magic of ESG or sustainability, or having a sustainability led culture in an organization. Okay, so this is basically creating the ESG roadmap, which means that what are the key elements when you go in for understanding what could be the roadmap for your unit or your organization. It would be ESG goals. You have to have short term goals as well as long term. You start with understanding the ecosystem on which you operate. What are your resources available? What is it that you can influence? What is it that you cannot influence in your capacity? So then that will help you to guide towards, okay, what I can influence and what I can really do as part of my existing resources become my short term. Long term also, goals are very, very important, because then if you don't have a goal, you won't have an ask where you go to senior management and tell them that this is what you aspire to do as a unit. And then these are things that you need support on. And if you have that in mind, if you have the entire roadmap in mind, then I'm sure that you will get the adequate support, um, and recognition, not to mention or not to forget, from the organization, because everybody, I think, understands the essence and importance and the relevance of sustainability and ESG in today's day and age. And then, as I said, your KPIs and KRIs. No, I mean, I wrote reduce carbon footprint by 30% is because when you are looking at KPIs currently, mostly in most places, this is what you see. And so you you can relate to this KPI, but there can be different KPIs. I mean, a simple KPI, if you ask me, could be as simple as, we would have sustainability related trivia or an initiative progress that we are working on under the signature of every person in your team or in your organization. So every time an email is read, it just reinforces the endeavor, the progress, or the essence of what is being done at a sustainability level. It just keeps the spark alive. It's as simple as that. So just giving you an example, but that could be a simple KPI for the short term. Milestone and timelines, obviously, if you're talking about reaching somewhere, if there are goals, then there have to be certain milestones and timelines that you have to commit to. And this is something that can be done at unit level and organization level, obviously. And then you establish accountability champions and incentives for them, because you know um, having said that, it has a lot of incentive for a larger good of the organization, the planet, the people, and the works. But again, we are humans, we are individuals which are driven by, recognition, by incentives. So, I'm a huge proponent of having a proper incentive policy in place at an organization level to basically be able to drive this whole agenda and incentivize people enough for them to be able to dedicate some time and uh, effort to the cause of ESG and sustainability. So, yeah, we help with also creating these incentive programs, and training the accountability champions on what their realm of responsibility should be and how they can drive change. So this is essentially, taking you through what it means to build an integrated ESG framework for any business that you are working for or that you own. And a lot of companies just have an ESG department that is responsible for, driving these kind of activities. But then to understand that they have a certain limitation where they are only able to get, I mean, this is my experience basically, where they have dedicated ESG departments. It takes them some years to get established and get the credibility that they're here and why they are here and what they're doing, and then to get the buy-in from different departments to basically commit to what they want to achieve. But if this is part of the entire culture of an organization, you wouldn't essentially need an ESG specific department to be able to drive this, because this is then driven from within the core values of an organization. So that's what my thought is. Um, I have a poll. Basically, I just wanted to understand from whoever is attending this session, which functional units they essentially relate to. So, Teresa, I have created a poll. I don't know, how do you make this live or for people to just respond to it?
The poll is already live.
Okay.
Uh, so all the requesting all the audience members to use the poll to give us an input of what function you to represent.
Yes, that'll be
Yeah.
really helpful.
So, Rashmi, till the time we see some action from the audiences, I
Sure,
wanted to ask you a question about ESG. Since
sure.
I'm the host, I get the privilege of asking you the first question.
Please do.
So there is a lot of emphasis on the E of the ESG. Like we hear a lot about environment, like we see actions in environment. But if I understand it correctly, the S and the G part is the most easiest to implement, and that's also the market trend, right? But not
Yes.
many people are talking about how simple it is to take the step ahead of implementing the social and the governance aspect of of running a company. So can you throw a little bit more light on what trends do you see, what areas people are prioritizing when it comes to the practicality of implementing ESG? And also, I know I'm being greedy a little bit over here, but
No, no,
also
no
we
problem.
work a lot with circular businesses who are early stage, have really amazing products, and we know they're going to scale up in the next 3 or 4 years. And their North Pole is basically creating environment related product. But sooner or later, government will implement some sort of ESG policy for them. So how can they keep an eye on, their own journey of scaling up while being ESG compliant? So yeah, two separate, very different
Good
questions, and
questions.
I'll leave
Yeah.
it to you to answer in the way you feel
No,
comfortable.
absolutely. Thank you for asking the questions. Um, I don't have, okay. So the first one you said was there's a lot of emphasis on E and what are the things that you can do within the scope of, say, SNG, which are more easier to implement. And that's actually very true. And going by, the case studies that we went through and things like that, it is, um, yeah, it's very intuitive when you talk about SNG. So let's start with in fact, let's start with E actually. So E is not essentially just doing environment and just reporting on your carbon emissions. Okay, it goes beyond that to the extent that how much are your actions actually impacting biodiversity, how much waste is being generated, recycled, because essentially then that also goes into environment. But uh, there are a lot of strategies that can be put in place to be intuitive about how much waste an organization generates and recycle that waste within them and not necessarily dispose that. So when I spoke about circularity, when I spoke about materiality issues, these kind of environment related initiatives are being taken. E-waste policy, for example, is very, very important. Electronic waste. Now let me go to SNG. So S, I think, is very. I think people can get really creative with this because if you understand, S is all about how you impact people. Now these people could be your customers, could be your employees, could be your stakeholder, sorry, your supply chain vendors. It could be community as a whole, right? So you're anyways doing, if you're a big company, you're doing CSR, so you are having a positive impact on the community. So how do you measure that impact is something that you should look at. For example, we had someone come to us saying, I've been, as part of our CSR policy, we've just been planting trees for 5 years. So now what is it that we can do in terms of understanding what is our carbon impact, what is our, how much carbon have we offset? So when you are implementing these policies, be cognizant of how, all these E, S, and G factors play together. So CSR, what is the social impact? How do you measure it? And what are the, um, you know, CSR plans that you should implement. Let me give you an example. For example, you have a huge factory in in one of the rural areas, and as part of your factory operations, you are drawing in a lot of you're polluting a lot of the water. So then basically what's happening is then the residents of that area are being impacted. They are not getting access to pure water. So what are the CSR initiatives that you can run? First, to filter out, to give them, to provide for clean drinking water for these people, then to conduct some campaigns or say educative initiatives where you tell them the importance of clean water and how it impacts their health, so that they don't ignore the fact that it's important and they don't just consume the water that's being polluted. I know that's not happening, but I'm just saying that your your CSR policies and practices can be aligned towards the S goals of yours. Employees. So a lot of DNI initiatives can be implemented. I'll give you a very simple one. Um, that's that any organization can do, small, big organization. Okay, so uh, we understand that for diversity, equity, and inclusion, there's a lot of um, some employees face this. They face diversity issues, they face inclusion issues, and they are not as bold to come up and speak up, right? So then nobody, the management will never know that these people are actually facing these issues, or the overall health of the organization is deteriorating. How do you address this? So a very simple way of doing it is, you place glass bowls in, say, the ladies and gents washroom, and you put, on the sides you put white pebbles and black pebbles. Anybody, and everybody visits the washroom, anybody who's faced some sort of a diversity issue, discrimination of any sort, can just pick up the black stone and put it in the box. Anybody who's actually happy with the way DEI is being managed by the company can put in the white pebble. Now, the end of every week or whatever interval that you want, you take stock of how many black coins and how many white coins do you have. And that gives you a very, very broad idea of cases that are happening on the floor with respect to discrimination. Now, what measures can you take towards this without necessarily having any employee to speak up of about their experience or what happened to them and things like that? That's not necessary. You still have an idea that something is going wrong. So, and what is it that you can do to address that? So maybe you conduct some more awareness sessions. Maybe you speak to managers to sensitize their teams. So these are things. The core is when you've identified that there's something amiss, or there's something that is going to impact the employee well-being. Then there are measures that you can take. So that's what I'm talking about. Like, when you talk to each of these um, employees as a whole, or a functional unit as a whole, you then get a fair understanding of really what they're going through at a people level as well. So that's the S part of it. G, as I said, ESG begins with G according to me, but you know, what are the I mean, in governance, it's nothing but the management encouraging a vision, a mission, committing to it, ensuring that they are talking about it in each of their town halls, and talking about measures which are being taken. Also recognizing, having an incentive policy in place for sustainability champions, for people who come up with these ideas, right? uh, how are they going to sponsor those ideas? For example, you can have every um, board member, maybe, or say all your senior executives in an organization, when they are, and I know this happens a lot, I'm just each of the senior management CXO level person has to have a goal that they will do. They just don't have a goal, but they have to have a plan in place of how they are going to align with the ESG objectives of a company. For example, if there is a if one of the CXOs decides that, let me see how many mobile phones that a company is giving to its employees over and above the personal mobile devices that they already have. So we call it, I think, company owned devices. How many company owned devices are being sanctioned for employees, at what level? What is the use? Is it, because again, this is resources. How are you going to limit the use of resources? So then, you do a study, you you understand what is the which employee really needs to have a company owned device. Can there be a software that helps the can to have an operating system that helps the employee to divide, or have a compartment, or sorry, what do you call it, a firewall between the personal usage and company usage, and can do with one device. So this is very simple, but it has to come from a CXO level. They have a agenda, they have a goal. Their bonuses and their incentives are tied to that goal to an extent. So they are then taking measures. It's just not that we completed 70% of posh training for most of our people, and we did not have a single posh case in this particular quarter. Yes, that's important, but you have to also take proactive measures towards implementing sustainability. So that's the culture that you're developing. That's a long answer, but I hope you understood what I said when it comes
Yeah,
to
yeah,
your first
absolutely. I think you
question.
broke it down. I think you broke it down to the details of what ESG really means. And I think this clarified a lot about prioritizing ESG and what, like, how you can align the S and G to your organization's work as well. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. You are the second question. Sorry, in this whole thought process of thinking about the answer, I think I just missed the second one.
Yeah, so I was saying that we work with a lot of circular businesses that are replacing traditional plastic products,
Hmm.
or figuring out new ways of doing the making products that would reduce water usage, carbon footprint, or give more income to low income communities. So while they're doing that, they also have this dilemma, right? Like of choosing easier or cheaper ways towards scaling up. And that's one. And two is that sooner or later the government will also be implementing ESG standards for all SMEs. So how
Yes.
can these early organizations keep their North Pole or North Star,
Yeah.
or keep their eye on the, like, what should they really do to be compliant in the long run? That
No,
is what I want.
absolutely. Okay. So one thing I think I would start with is the fact that any business that's coming up now in this day and age is very, very cognizant of how important it is for them to be, uh, you know, um, sustainable, to have ethical practices, because that is now becoming your brand narrative. Because, the kind of customers that there are, the awareness that's being spread across ESNG
Can
about the
I
climate.
can I Sorry, can I disagree with you on this a little bit? The
Sure,
reason
sure.
is, yeah. So the reason is that because, and I find this myself to be also sometimes being biased over here, because we sort of hang out with with people that align with our value systems of ESG.
Mhm.
I feel that there is this bias where we feel that a lot of people understand the priority of putting ESG above profits or aligning the business values towards ESG. But then I have met a whole lot of entrepreneurs who really are choosing profits over any of these value systems. So though there is the awareness is increasing, there is still a lot of scope for people to become aware of this new way of doing business.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you are starting a business is your primary objective is to make profits, right? But when I say that there's a lot of awareness that's being created, it's because I'm going to take a very simple example. All of us look at Instagram, they scroll Instagram like everybody does, right? And once or more than once, you would have come across two things. One is that there are certain section of influencers, so to say, who are highlighting um, the positive and the negative externalities of certain products. Now, everybody has heard about this whole Bonvita farm. What the name of I don't remember the name of the influencer, farmer something. But the way he highlighted how Bonvita is misleading. Now, this is a big brand, I know. We'll come to the small ones. How Bonvita is misleading mothers and their perception of the brand, and what the reality is, the amount of awareness that it got into the system, got into the entire framework or the entire business landscape. The sales had dipped. Bonvita had to actually write to the influencer. They had to hire him to give them some consulting on how they can do better on this. Now, if you listen to a video like this, you know and then you start thinking about really what are the other options you have, you kind of try and you automatically try get inclined to seeing, okay, what could be better than what I'm already having. So the traditional brands or the way of doing business is definitely changing. I know there is a section of business owners as well as consumers who are still very, very price sensitive. But if you think about it, the there is a larger section which is more aware, which is more environment conscious, and they will outshine the smaller section. So your sales will definitely take a hit at some point, and that is basically being, the kind of statistics that I shared earlier in the presentations that shows largely that. And it's just not the product, it's the entire narrative, it's the branding, it's the packaging, it's the ingredients, and it is also the perception that companies are creating towards how this product is good for them. And if you look at any product, there is a, when I say product, okay, let's say any any product will have a website, right? Every website that you go to has some indication of them and how they are trying to be sustainable. And I'm saying it because I go through so many websites, because I'm reviewing ESG and things like that. Every, I would say 90% of the websites now talk about sustainability, how their products are sustainable. It can be a really polluting product like engine oils, for example. They will still have, you see ITC, it's a big brand, I know, amount of sustainability initiatives that they are taking, because the nature of their business is pollution. They they do a lot of sin related production of cigarettes and things like that. So they have to balance it out, because otherwise, it just creates a lot of negative externality for them. So their websites are talking about sustainability, the social media is talking about ESG and sustainability. So if the larger narrative around most of the advertising is that, then sooner or later, the perception of people changes, the perception of consumers changes, and if there's not too much of a price difference, then you know who wins. you know so it's just a matter of time when we'll all move towards um this larger agenda, is what I feel. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to consider anybody else who has.
I agree with you. I think the Bonvita campaign, or the Instagrammer who brought about Bonvita thing, was a very big wake up call for a lot of brands to look at what they are actually promoting and talking about or advertising, and it created quite a bit of stir in the
Sure.
social media realm. Agreed. I think we have
Exactly.
some comments from Gul. Do you want to read them out?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thanks, Gul, for sharing comments. But Gul says that I suggest we need to simplify the system so as to let people start and implement this in the organization. Exactly. That's the whole essence of basically today's session, and also what we believe in, or say I believe in, as Engage Solutions, as a company as well. And as we have to educate first with proper training so as to get them educated and acquaint, so as to adopt and implement. Absolutely. Because as I said, when people talk about ESG, or when even my own brother, for example, if I tell him, okay, what this is ESG and all, he's completely like, don't talk about ESG. It's too much jargon and it's too complicated to the mind, because it's a whole new Pandora box they think will open up, where we'll be talking about carbon, about emissions, about, say, a lot of these things which get complicated to an extent. But what Gul rightly saying is that, yeah, we need to create that kind of awareness and show that it's really simple. It's actually something that we're already doing. We just have to bucketize them into ESG. So that's an endeavor that actually I have an Instagram channel that I've recently started called ESG with Rashmi, where my objective is to actually review, what companies are doing as part of their business practices. Like I spoke about Faber-Castell and how they have a ESG agenda guideline checkbox in each of their meeting rooms. Now it's very simple, but it's a practice that they do, and that needs to be highlighted. So if we are able to highlight these simple practices being done already by companies, it serves as inspiration for other companies, for employees, for business owners, for everyone. So that's my other endeavor as well on a personal front, and I'd urge everybody to check that out. It's just started, I don't have content as such, but very soon a lot of videos are going to come up which highlight companies, bring into the forefront, and sometimes I will also sort of bring them in the limelight to showcase what they can do and what they're doing wrong as well. So yeah, I mean, it's called ESG with Rashmi. You can check out Instagram. And this is not, I'm
Yes.
not promoting it, but because it came up, so I just mentioned it.
Yeah, do promote, I would say, and do put the handle in the chat box for people to follow.
Of course. I I'm very new with with Insta, but I think you use it with at the rate of. If not, you can search ESG with Rashmi. So yeah. So that's thank you. And I also wanted to end. Are there any other questions or comments I'd love to hear? Um,
This is the last opportunity, guys. We are wrapping up. We know there are a lot of people in the back end as attendees. We'd love to hear what your thoughts were, what your thoughts are about the session. How much did you enjoy it? Any thought, comment, insight, question is most welcome. And also, last opportunity to do so. Thank you, Akhilesh, for sharing the Instagram profile.
you can type in comments also. That's okay. If okay.
So, Rashmi, while we are getting comments, one more question. So, if anybody is in the process of newly understanding the world of ESG, do you have any resources, reading material, or websites that they should go to understand the basic elements of ESG?
Um, I wouldn't have like a one single resource that one can really go and understand it. I'm in the process of actually developing one which can be put on our website, but other than that, honestly, there's so much on the web about ESG and different facets of it. I think, and there's the problem with ESG is like I've been asked with a lot of people that they want to, pursue a career now in ESG, and what are the courses that they should sign up for or pursue, basically, study. But again, as ESG can be simple, ESG is very complicated when it comes to say if you want to become like a climate scientist, a climate accountant, for example, or a DNI professional that also now comes under sustainability or ESG. So I don't have a single this thing resource that one can refer to. But I will be happy to chat with someone or help them with a couple of links that I can put together and send if there is a way to sort of after the session send out, then I'll be happy to do that. But currently, I don't think I have any.
Sure, no worries. Would you like to share your website link also in the chat
I will
box?
do that. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I have done that. I can share my LinkedIn profile if it helps, but I'm not sure. Are you allowed to do that?
Yeah, in fact, I shared your profile and LinkedIn profile at the start. Let
Oh,
me
you
just
did already.
repaste
Okay,
it.
lovely.
Yeah,
Okay, okay,
let me
then
just
that's good.
repaste it again over here for people who are here. Okay, some of poll responses that we are getting now. So you have representation from IT and operations
Operations are the
for.
most complex ones, actually. Like because operations is something that we all struggle with because it just the scope is so diverse when it comes to operations because it includes your supply chain, it includes all the vendors, it includes your obviously different facilities across different geographies. So yeah, it's a huge animal. Yeah, that's where I struggle with as well, honestly, because it can really be challenging, the kind of KPIs, the kind of roadmaps that can be created. But that's the fun.
Yeah, also it is very, very personalized for each of the organization that you work with. So I can
Yes.
imagine there are no, even though there is GRI and other ways of measuring your impact, both positive and negative, but it is very, very individualistic when it comes to the models of the organization. So I can only imagine.
Yes, yes. So I think that's one reason why the um what do you call it? The implementation of ESG as a business strategy is is something that people are not very upbeat about because it requires some level of investment. When we tell you that, okay, in terms of your energy risk in the future, because you're using only fossil fuel or say the traditional means of electricity, in the coming years there will have to be transition to renewable sources, so they will have to invest in solar or hydro, whatever they feel best. But then if you're able to present them with the cost benefit analysis where we say that long term you're saving this much cost, this is the investment against that, that is when it sort of helps them understand and take a decision. But yeah, it is a long game to take a decision, to understand, have that foresight how ESG is going to help you. It's always something that we are grappling with.